This is all 8 positions. There's only 8 positions that you need to know for your mouth to learn the English RP accent perfectly. Of course, there are some slight variations, as you'll see, in each mouth position. There'll be teeny tiny little shifts, and I'll walk you through all of those. But I wanted to make this video just to show you that there's actually much fewer mouth positions than you've probably learned if you pick up some of the accent books out there. They'll tell you there's 44 phonemes, there are, but there's only 8 simple mouth positions. And if you're looking at just the sounds, fricatives, plosives, affricatives, vowels, semivowels, etc., nasal consonants, you're going to look at all of those and you'll see all these different mouth positions, and it can be a little bit daunting when you think, oh man, I have to learn all 44 of these completely higgledy-piggledy mouth positions, all these possible combinations in the mouth. It's very, very simple. There are 8 simple mouth positions. You're going to have the TH, F and V, smiling, E, I, E, A, rounded, U, O. Tongue tip up at the front, and this is probably the longest column. T, D, N, R, L, S, Sh, Ch, J. Tongue up at the back. K, G, M. Lips together. P, B, M. And then the last one here. I should have put this in the middle, but I spent so long drawing the mouth positions, I just thought I'll leave it over here. Lips relaxed, tongue relaxed, jaw relaxed. Ah. And we're going to walk through all of them in finer detail now. So if you couldn't keep up then, don't worry. I was just giving you a little round of sounds then. But now, let's go for the first on our list. Let's look at the tongue out. This is for the TH sound. And you'll see there's the theta sign there for the unvoiced T. All the ones in blue are the unvoiced sounds. And those are sounds where your vocal folds are not vibrating. They're just relaxed, sitting to the side of your windpipe, and you just exhale, and the sound is made from the interaction of air with the mouth. And in the case of the TH, it's going to be a little gap between the teeth, so you let your jaw relax. And then the tongue is going to come out onto the bottom lip, like so. And you want the underside of the tongue touching the lip, the top of the lip. And you can exaggerate for now. It'll be helpful if you just exaggerate a little bit. Something like... And then the sides of the lips are going to hug the sides of the tongue. So you'll have an airlock from about the canine teeth all the way around underneath the lip. And the only place the air can go out is under the top front 4 teeth. The front teeth and the peg laterals. So if you just exhale and bring your jaw up gently, keep your tongue relaxed, don't let the tongue be tense and sort of shifting. You can just be relaxed at the front, so tension is actually on the very back of the tongue, pushing the tongue out. Exhale, narrow that gap by lifting the chin up, by tightening the masseter jaw muscles at the sides here. Don't go too tight. You start getting that whining sound of saliva. And you'll feel air pressure, like you have to push the air out. Shouldn't feel like that. It should easily come out. And that is the theta sign there, the unvoiced TH. That is an unvoiced fricative sound. That's the sound of air being squeezed. And that's what you're hearing. Then to do the voiced version, you're just going to start to phonate, which is when your vocal folds vibrate. So you'll just... So start with the unvoiced one, and we should hear that sound really clear. And then the sound of your vocal folds... That's going to come in, but this sound should stay the same. The fricative sound, the sound of air being squeezed, should stay the same. And a good practice technique to help you get control of continuing your airflow, which is controlled by your breath, your diaphragm, your chest and shoulders, but mostly your diaphragm. And then bringing in your vocal folds in your voice box separately, trying to isolate those two parts, those two mechanisms in your wind instrument. Your voice is a wind instrument. Isolating the breath and the voice box separately. So the breath is ongoing, always ongoing. And the voice box is just coming on. The vocal folds, they're shaped like a V. And they're going to come on. The narrow end is at the front. So if you had a camera, it's called a stroboscopic exam. If you look up a stroboscopic exam, you'll see a camera going down someone's throat, and you'll see the vocal folds. They're shaped like that. Narrow end is at the front, and they just squeeze. The air like that. So that's the voiced sound. Like that. And that'd be a really good exercise if you could practice that. If you're not very good at the TH, or if you don't have good breath control in general, one of the first exercises I always get people on is this, the fricative exercise. There's 4 fricative mouth positions. We've done the first one here. They're probably the most difficult. And I'm exaggerating there, but all you really need is just a slight bit of the tongue just slightly protruding. This, that, the other, 3 thick thistles. And that's the unvoiced TH and the voiced TH. And that's the tongue out position. Done. Probably one of the harder mouth positions. Definitely if English is not your first language, many people can struggle with that one. In particular, people from Eastern Europe, but anywhere really. A lot of people struggle with that one. F and V. This time it's going to be lips to the teeth. So the tongue out, the TH, was the sound of the air being squeezed between your tongue and your teeth. For the F and V, it's going to be your bottom lip to your top teeth. And I would start again with that little gap between the teeth. English has a more dropped jaw setting, so you need to get used to this slightly dropped shape in the mouth. And then you're going to just bring that bottom lip up. You can bring the jaw up a touch, but try to keep the gap. And it'll just be very loose. And if that's my lip and that's my teeth, I want my lip to just slightly cover. I don't want to bite like this and roll my lip back and bite it. I want to have my lip slightly covering the front and the air squeezes out there. Like that. And again, there should be no air pressure. You'll see this sort of constriction this contortion around the mouth if you get too tight, and you'll feel like you have to push, and it shouldn't be like that. You should be able to just and try to resist any of this with the top lip. When you're first starting with all of this, you're going to be using a lot more tension than you need. I remember trying to learn guitar, and I was learning some of the chords, and my hand would be super tight and tense, and I would get very tired very quickly. Whereas my guitar teacher, he just had the muscle memory so lovely and loose, and he could just sit there all day long just playing non-stop, doing all these crazy positions, and he would never get tired. And it's the same with the mouth. You're going to feel like you have to put in quite a lot of effort initially, and that's why I'd really recommend slowing down. Slow right down. 10 times slower than you think you need to. And then you can phonate. And then you have the V. And for both of these, for all the fricatives, you'll feel the air going out. You'll feel it like a little air cushion flowing out between the soft articulator, in this case your bottom lip, and the hard articulator, your top teeth. In this case it'll be your tongue and your top teeth. One articulator is soft and moves into the position. The other one is just strong and stable and will just hold the line there, and that air will go out and you'll feel it squeezing, and you'll feel that slight resistance, and that is the sound that you're hearing, is the vibration you're feeling there of those air particles getting squeezed. That's TH, that's F and V. Now we're going to get on to the smiling with the lips. So you spread the muscles here, and the tongue is forward, tongue tip always behind the bottom teeth for vowels, and then the arch of the tongue is going to be high up and far forward like that. And then we just get lower, and we have 4 steps down. And this one at the bottom is actually very much the same as this one at the top. And I'll show you what I mean by that. But that's a semi-vowel, that's the Y. Whereas here we've got E, I, E, A. So let's start with the E. We're going to do jaw again. Always want a little gap for all the vowels especially. And we're just going to spread the lips here and smile. And a little bit of tension here at the side of the lips. And then we can push the tongue far forward and high up. E, E. And there's a little gap between the tongue and the roof of the mouth. And that's where the sound is coming out. And that's what's giving it that distinctive E sound, is the shape, that the wave of vibration made by the vocal folds. That's what makes it distinctive when it hits the ear, is that shape as it goes through the mouth, and those air particles chain reaction through the air into the ear of your listener. E, E, eel, ill, E, and then the next one down is E, ill, ill. And so there'll be a slightly larger gap. And you can just think about it in terms of lowering E, I. And now you have a slightly bigger gap. E, I, E, I. Ik, it. E, eel, seen, been, sin, bin. Would be the lower one. Another step down. E, I, E. E, E. And this one you can actually get quite low. E, E, E. And have quite a large gap between the tongue and the roof of the mouth. You want to try to get as large a gap as you can before the vowel becomes another vowel. So if I keep going lower, I can do it quite high. Still an now it's starting to become an a for apple. Elephant, apple. E, a, e, a. And even if I didn't move my jaw, I could just do that with my tongue. E, I, a. I think I did move my jaw a little bit there. E, I, a. E, I, a. Apple. And imagine you taking a nice bite of a big apple for this one here. You'll sometimes see written in one of these two ways, usually in a diphthong. You'll see it written like that. And on its own, you'll see it written like that. Not to be confused with which is the other way around, or zh. Y. This is the semi-vowel for yellow. Yes. And it's actually the same place as the E to begin with. You just don't need to smile. Yellow, yes. And actually a lot of those vowels, the smile doesn't add a huge amount. E, I, a, apple, elephant, ill, eel. It's mostly the tongue position that gives it shape, but especially as you get towards the a and the e, it can give it that brightness. Alpha. I'm trying to think of an L. Hell, help, help. Gives it that brightness that's a bit more distinctive on the sound. So just try to get a little smile, but especially for these, I wouldn't use too much of an E, but same with all the shapes. If you really exaggerate, you'll get a bit more clarity on the mouth. Shapes. Hey. Next, the rounded. Don't think too much about what that might look like. I think it looks like a crown. Sorry. Ooh. Or, w. And again, that's basically that one, but you'll have a bit more shape in the back of the mouth. This is rounded lips and tongue towards the back. Rounded lips, tongue towards the back. So, whereas before we had E with the tongue pushing, now we're going to pull it back, and we'll start with ooh. And for the ooh, you don't need to do like a... You want to squeeze here, and there might be a little tension in the top and bottom, but it's mostly the sides that you want to control. Oh, like that, like that. So you'll bring the lips in, and I like to imagine I'm sipping a little bit of water. And my tongue is fairly high towards the back. There'll be a small gap, similar to E, but you want to try and shift it back just a touch. You don't even need to do it that much. And you should get a nice ooh. If it sounds like ooh, then you're too low, and you want the tongue a bit higher. Ooh. Then if I bring it all a bit lower, ooh, food, foot, book, boot, boot, book. And this one, you have a little bit more of an open aperture. And a little bit more space above the tongue, but not too much. And then the next one down. Or, law. more, store, score. And that one, you can't really overround or you'll just sound a bit more posh if you really overround. It's the horse vowel. And if you think about a horse, they have a nice long face. Or, and you get these lovely Magnus sort of cheekbones, supermodel. Or you do your supermodel face or whatever. Then you've got the O vowel. And this one's a little bit more open on the lips. And the tongue is all the way down to the bottom at the back. O. Like you've got a hot potato in your mouth. Hot, proper, copper, coffee, pot. Like that. And then this, we'll go back to the W, but try to keep the space of this vowel with the jaw lower, but you make the lips really reach. Whoa. Nice big gap, lips reach. Like that. That's the W. That's 4 shapes already. I, a, yeah. O. Whoa. And now we get into the complicated one. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky. And all it is, you want all these tongue positions to be with your tongue tip up. And you want that for a couple of reasons. One, if your tongue is over like this, some people will do like a with the tongue tip behind the bottom teeth, or an S like that. I used to do my S like that and my SH. And it makes a more sibilant sound. It's a little harder to get into because you're actually using twice as much of your tongue in this shape as you would if it was in this shape. And then for certain words like slow, where you have to come up for the L, most people will do the L with the tongue tip up. La. But a lot of people will do the S, the SH, the T, the D, the sh, j, with the tongue tip behind the bottom teeth and the middle pushing up, squeezing the air. You want to avoid that because if you want to go from an S to an L, if your tongue tip's already up, it will just go slow. It's already in the position. Start. And your tongue can just go like that. And it'll be a lot easier than going like that for certain words, which would be more tricky. It'll take more time. And generally what I've found with most of my clients, including myself when I was trying to fix this, is that having your tongue in that position means your jaw comes tighter together. And often people will get lip tension as well. And as they try to pull their lips apart, especially Spanish speakers I've noticed. But a lot of accents will do this, and it's basically hit or miss why we get this. Some people learn to put the tongue tip up because that's just what they settled on, or maybe somebody showed them. Other people, like myself, we just are trying to produce the sounds based on what we're hearing. And when we do that, we learn to make the sound however we can make it, not the way that's most efficient and best. And I'm telling you, this, with the tongue tip up, like a whale's tail, is going to be so much easier. You can start to drop your jaw more. You'll be less staccato and choppy sounding. And you can be a bit more legato and smooth sounding, which is going to be very important for English. And it's what a lot of people really want, is that very clear, well-rounded, full sound. Not a short, sharp, choppy sort of sound where a lot of the air is getting stuck because the mouth is never able to open because the tongue is trapped in this position. So there's a number of reasons. There's probably some I haven't even mentioned. But those would be the main ones. It's harder to transition between other phonemes. You get a lot shorter, sharper, choppier. Vowels don't get out of the mouth as easily. The airflow isn't as good. Many reasons. So, believe me when I tell you, if you want to get really good at this, at pronunciation and RP and elocution and English in general, you will try to get your tongue tip up for all these sounds. Let's go through them. We've got D. That'll be the first one. You put your tongue tip up and it'll touch the alveolar ridge, the gum ridge up here. And even if you do like an N to begin with, say if you're used to doing your T like that, think of an N. You might even do your N, like that. Bring your tongue tip up. I should have said this at the start, but you want to get a mirror or a selfie camera and have a look at your mouth as you're doing this. Don't trust the feeling alone. The feeling will lie to you. It's so strange to say, but if you actually look at your mouth and try to move it to control your jaw, your tongue, your lips, you'll see it's moving all over the shop. You'll see other parts of your face moving and your head and everything. And you want to just isolate jaw, tongue, lips. So tongue tip up to the alveolar ridge. You'll get an airlock. And for the T, I like to bring my teeth nearly together. And I get a t, t. And this is one of the few sounds where I would bring my teeth almost together. T. And then I'd drop immediately to the next position. But T, tongue tip up, and it's just air, no phonation. This is not T. This, in the International Phonetic Alphabet, is T. Don't vibrate your vocal folds. There'll be a large portion of people right now who are probably going T, T, and vibrating their vocal folds. And it's kind of hard to tune into. And this is what I mean about mind-muscle connection. When you're about to do it, you're probably going, building up air pressure behind the tongue, and you're squeezing your vocal folds so that when the tongue drops and the air moves again, it vibrates. D, D. Indian accents, especially. D, 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 take, tango, instead of take, tango. Tongue tip up, no phonation, vocal folds relaxed, like you're doing a like that. If it helps, do that to begin with. Exhale. And as soon as the tongue tip touches, it just knocks. The air will just knock the tongue tip out of the way and trip the airflow. This is a plosive sound. Fricatives, vowels, plosives. The air pressure builds up and pops out. Next, exactly the same mouth position and airflow for the D, but you're going to phonate D, D, D. Not D, just D, D, D. D would be D, D, D. And we just want D, T, D. And for the D, you can have a bit more of a gap between your teeth. D, D, like that. Then, N. We already did it, but very similar to the D, but instead of making the air pressure build up, D, and pop out, you're just going to let the air go through your nose. So you go to your D, and just let the air go through your nose. And again, you should be able to get a nice gap between the teeth. And it's not even a N. and D, the tongue has to drop. For the N, you just hold that position. Position. That's all we need the audience to hear. It's a nasal consonant. Consonant. No. Then the R. And I've lined them up like this because going from the N to the R, it's a little easier if you start with the N. If you're not familiar with the R is just R, R, R. And I would usually do it with my teeth nearly together. R, 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 R. But let's just find it and get really accurate. You're gonna and then you're gonna bring your tongue back like it's curling back on itself. The sides will still touch. Like you're going like this with it, like you're beckoning. And you'll get a little gap open up between the alveolar ridge and the tongue tip. And the air going out over the tongue tip and between the tongue tip and the gum ridge, a soft articulator and a hard articulator, that is a fricative sound. And so I was kind of wrong actually earlier when I said there's only 4 fricative mouth positions. There's one more, and it's the the r. And it's not a r. Again, that would be r. It's just a r. So if you see it in a word, hurry. That's what we want. We don't want hurry. If you see what I mean. Ner. And you can do that with your teeth nearly together, and it'll be a little easier because your tongue won't have to reach as much. You can. Next, we have the L. And it's the inverse of the R. What do I mean by the inverse? Well, for the R, your tongue tip's not touching, but the sides are. For the L, the tongue tip is touching and the sides are not. And the phonation goes out. The sides of the tongue, it's a lateral releasing sound. And people talk about the dark L, which is mainly on the end of a word. All, call, little, metal, battle, paddle, and a light L where the tongue drops. There's not really any difference. They're sort of made up terms because there's just one L position. It just depends on whether you hold it there, call, or whether you move on to another sound. Light, laugh. That would be the light L. Laugh, dark L, candle, or cool. Or you don't necessarily cool. You could do. You might choose to do that for effect. All of it. You might drop the tongue, or you could just hold it there, all. But make sure you hold it long enough so the sound can be heard. All. You need a bit of extra vibration to go out the sides. Don't arrive and stop. All. It won't be as distinct as all. And if you want to make it even more distinct, all, you can do the little drop. T, d, n, r, l, t, d, n, l, r, t, d, n, l, r. And to get these two, we're going to look at the T again. Now these are probably after the TH. For some people they'll be harder than the TH. And to get the S, you want to do a T. With your tongue tip up. And as if you're going to do that T, so let the air push on the back. And then before you drop, instead of dropping the whole tongue, you just crack the very front, because your tongue is curved at the front, and so is your mouth. It's got this curved shape. So when the air is pushing on it, you just... and you get a little gas leak sound. And I would do it with my teeth nearly together. And that is the sound of air being squeezed between the soft articulator of your tongue tip and the alveolar ridge, the hard articulator. And you might even get this slight funnel. But really, your tongue just needs to be in this position. A slight sort of bowl shape like that. Sides all touching, air going out the center. So if you hold that, start with your T, crack the front, teeth nearly together, and then start to phonate. And now you have your Z. And for all the fricatives, you want to be able to hear the unvoiced sound. The same all the way, and you just bring the sound of your vocal folds vibrating in and out. S and Z. Now, SH and J. Very much the same as the S. But instead of your tongue tip and your gum ridge, if this is the roof of your mouth and that's the front going out, you're going to sort of mush your tongue up a bit more. And instead of it having this nice space behind, it's going to get a bit more like that. Instead of a, it'll be more like a, almost like that. Where the pad of the tongue at the very front is going to squeeze the air to the area just above the alveolar ridge, just on the very front edge of the hard palate. So you might want to do a T. Do your S. Crack the front and let the air go out. And then mush your tongue up just a little bit, not too tight. Teeth nearly together. You can even get a whistle. Sounds much better with the teeth nearly together. Like that. Ooh. Ooh. Shush. Measure. Measure. Like that. So you go t, d, n, take, dunk, never, really, the red robin rested in the rose bush. And when you start to get this tongue tip up for all those consonants, red robin rested in the rose bush. You get this really nice wavy tongue action at the front, and the can't believe I just said wavy tongue action. And the air and vibration is flowing out of your mouth and just tripping off, squeezing and tripping. 6 sizzling sausages sizzled in the saucepan. J. And now if you see there's a T, T, So that's where you're going to go for the ch. You're going to go to the T position. Then you're going to do a sh, t, sh. But you're going to do them both at the same time, which will be like ch. And it's called an affricative, where it's not quite a fricative and it's not quite a plosive. The air pressure builds up and pops out like a plosive, so the plosive's at the start. But then as it goes through, you get that fricative sound. And it's much easier with your teeth nearly together. Just make sure, j, that's the phonated one, j, j. Make sure that when you're doing these, especially these, if you are a tongue tip downer with the arch of the tongue going up, make sure when you do these, all of these, you look in a mirror, try it with your thumb, and you should see the underside of your tongue there, and your tongue tip going up and down, not you want the tongue tip up. That's the tongue tip up. Woo! Done. Hard part is over. That's the hard part. Now, easy peasy lemon squeezy. We got the tongue tip staying behind the bottom teeth, and the back of the tongue is going up to the soft palate. G, g. You've got the unvoiced sound k for cake, cake. And you got the voiced sound for g, g, go, gauge, g, k, g. Same mouth movement, k, g, k, g. And you should have a little gap between the teeth, k, g. And your tongue should be doing most of the work. If you see your jaw moving, k, g, k, g. Try to keep your jaw still. K, g, k, g. And then you got that nice where you go to do a g, but you let the air go through your nose. So you're going to do a g, g, but instead of going and letting the air pressure build up, you hung. I hung my clothes on a hanger. And if you're not sure with the ng whether you're supposed to say the g, like for the word stronger, have a look in the dictionary. It's not always super clear. You might need to go on Google. And what you'll see, if you go on Google, if you can't find it in the dictionary, because sometimes they don't include the other variations, they'll just have strong. And for the word strong, you'll see this. But for stronger, you'll see that right after that. Ng, ng. Nasal consonant, plosives. Nearly done. Stay with me. Lips together plus gap between the teeth. So my lips are together, but there's a gap here. So the gap between the teeth, lips come together. And I let the air pressure build up. And I relax my lips. And like all the plosives, especially the unvoiced plosives, if you say it at the end of a word or in the middle of a word, or on the start when you're linking from a word into that word, you want the articulators to come together as the air's rushing through, and the air just knocks them out the way. Up, trip, the air. And then exactly the same, but phonate for the B. B, 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 p, b, p, b, p, b. And then for the M, lips together, air goes through your nose, nasal consonant, mic. Lamb, the B on the end of lamb is silent. And that's the lips together. Last, but certainly not least. In fact, these ones here, probably the most used sounds. Most used sounds you're going to hear. Here. That's called the neutral schwa. And all it is the lips relaxed, jaw relaxed, tongue relaxed. And then act like somebody's asked you a question and you're trying to work it out like it's a really hard maths problem, and you just no lip tension, no try not to be too closed. Most people will be too closed. And you want to be open, jaw relaxed. Give your jaw a stretch if you need to. Ooh. And then at least a thumb tip gap. If you're new to this, but most of the time it will just be a pinky. But what you'll probably do is your tongue will be pushed up a bit too high. And you might sound a bit more like a Scouser. You want it down there. That's the short version, shortest of all the vowels. Better, teacher, doctor, lawyer. About, police, commute, communicate, short, long, same position. Her shirt, world, purse, purse. People tend to do the long vowels. That's what the colon means here. U. Oh, sorry. E, U, R, O. Those are the 5 long vowels. E, U, R, O. People tend to do them too short. So try doing them much too long. Ooh, E, O, ha, ha, ha. That's the R. But you've got and this is lips and tongue relaxed. You're going to take a step down, go a little lower. Hut. You see, it's shaped like a hut or an arrow pointing up. The strut vowel. Come to London one Sunday, mother, and we shall have duck and onion stuffing for lunch. And then all the way down at the bottom. You got and for this one, your tongue is going to go back a little bit as well. If you can see your uvula in the back of your mouth, that'll be ideal. When you're pushing your tongue down, you're probably pushing it more back than down. If you look in the mirror, most people will tend to try to go down, but it's actually going back like, and you want, Ah. Heart. Army. Army. And that's all of the mouth positions that you need to know. Need to know. The diphthongs I, oo, ear, oi. They're all just going from one to another. And in fact, the entire thing, whenever you're speaking, you can do this in other languages. You can do this in other languages. Some of them, there'll be some phonemes every now and then, way fewer than you're thinking, because a lot of people will go, oh, well, that might be an English thing, but in my language, we don't do that. We hold the air. Maybe. In English, most of the time, you want to start to practice a continuous flow of air that doesn't get cut off. Doesn't get cut off. The vocal folds come off and on. They don't need to clench. Water. Bottle of water. Bottle of water. They should relax or phonate, vibrate. They never need to clench. Cut off. A lot of people will cut and use their mouth to cut off the airflow and use their mouth to chop up all the words. Chop up all of the words. Instead of having a continuous flow of air, that's all the breath is doing. Vocal folds, that's all they're doing. And the mouth is squeezing, shaping, shaping, and tripping. Shouldn't be. You shouldn't be holding the airflow. Don't be holding the airflow. Your mouth should be constantly moving. Slow and smooth. Decelerate. All the movements in between the syllables. And you're just moving as smoothly as possible through all the mouth shapes that we've just been over. And timing, so you're moving the mouth as smoothly as possible through all the mouth shapes we've just been over. And then your vocal folds are coming off and on. And your breath is continually exhaling. And you can tend to follow this rhythm, dum-dee-dum. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them. And those are all the mouth positions you're ever going to need. And then you just move smoothly between them. So if you can get a grip of these 8 shapes, and you can understand the differences between them, and have that structure in your mind, and then just do a word or a sentence, or even just a word. And I recommend doing it every time you brush your teeth and you're looking in the mirror. When you wake up, shunt all of that to the forefront of your mind. There's some warm-ups you can do as well. I'll put them in the description of this video, the fricative warm-up and the articulation warm-up to control your breath, your vocal folds, your mouth movements. And then you literally just move slow and wide and smooth through all those mouth positions, feeding that air and vibration through your windpipe. It's a wind instrument. And you don't want to get stuck. Don't want to get stuck. Hopefully, this video has given you something interesting to think about and maybe a little bit of hope if you were worried that, oh my gosh, there's 44 phonemes, how am I going to go through them all? There's 8 mouth positions, just 8. Some slight variation on them. Like and subscribe, follow for more, join us on Insta, LinkedIn, Meta, all that shenanigans. I'm not very good at this. Calling out, subscribing, the liking thing. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you want me to make videos on. I'm here to help you. If you want any words doing, let me know. Otherwise, you can always get some coaching from me. Go to the About section, go to the description of this video, and book yourself a coaching call. And we can go over this. We've got a beautiful guide that will take you through an easy 6-step process to get from wherever you are, from foreign accent, really, really strong English being your second language. As long as you can speak decent English, I can teach you how to have excellent pronunciation, exquisite elocution, mastery over your voice, your breath, your voice box, your mouth, and you'll make this whole thing so much easier, and then your listener can just relax, and all those lovely sounds are just going to pour all over them. Really, really clean and crisp and well defined. So check out Speech Smithy, like, comment, sub, and I'll see you in the next video.